What's up, everyone? It's Matt Martin with the Grass Factor. Today, wanted to talk about building programs using Carbon X, right? So, a lot of the questions I get asked are, where should I be using this in my program? What are the application intervals that I should be using it? I get into it a little bit on the live stream, talking about exactly what I do and don't like about the term application interval. It's not fair to put a general rule of thumb on a program by saying that I have to apply fertilizer every 8 weeks, because that's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the utilization rate by the plant. So there has to be a little bit more timing involved with that. So that was kind of the purpose of this, to show how I would integrate it into a program. Now, because right now, given the time of year, this is going to be prime time for applicators in the transition zone. Soil temperatures are getting to where they needed to be, especially after this last week. We got temperatures. Bermuda's even starting to show some signs of life after the polar vortex. So I wanted to talk specifically about Carbon X programs in the transition zone. So when we look at Carbon X as a fertilizer, and always start with the label, the analysis, the first thing we see is that it's high nitrogen. So when we see it's a high nitrogen product, immediately that should tell us where we want to integrate this would be in a period where we wanted to use a high nitrogen product, or a period where the plant is going to demand high nitrogen. So typically where we would see this would be like for fall recovery, coming out of the summer, and you're starting to hit that second peak of growth in the September, October, November timeframe. If you're looking to apply a quote-unquote winterizer for cool season, transition zone, fescue, it would be a good source there because of the ammoniacal nitrogen content. Early spring, I don't particularly like a lot of the Carbon X going down early spring. You could see that when you start getting application rates in excess of 1 pound, 1 pound of actual N, so 4 pounds per thousand, you're going to be dealing with a significant amount of surge growth. And the more vegetative we keep that plant growing in, the higher instances we set ourselves up for disease. So when we start talking about early spring, and I think this even backs up further into late winter, I think that's actually when we begin to back down our rates. So the beginning of the season in actuality would be the September timeframe through the Memorial Day timeframe, the end of May. So the closer we get to the end of May, the less and less and less and less of nitrogen we want to be applying. So when trying to decide where you want to place Carbon X in your program, keep that in mind. Prime time would be fall recovery, into winter, coming out of winter. And then as we start moving into early spring and later spring, we want to back that down. And depending on where you are in the transition zone means how late of a spring you actually have, right? So that can dictate quote unquote days as far as when you're actually making your application. So this is pretty simple layout here. I've got on the left and right a couple different instances of what a program would look like. So starting with round one, this would be purely like a granular type program. Round one, we're going out with Carbon X with prodiamine. We're putting that down at 3 pounds per thousand. At 3 pounds per thousand, that gives us just under a half pound AI, a half pound of active ingredient, not a half pound. That would be the equivalent of, a half pound of 65 WDG, because that's only 65% active. So we're talking about a half pound of actual AI. So this would be like 0.8 pounds of WDG would be in the 3 pound per thousand rate of the Carbon X 0.37% prodiamine. So just under a half pound AI of prodiamine, plus we'd be getting about 0.72 pounds of actual nitrogen on the ground. Now with that 0.72 pounds, we're looking at 30% of that being slow release, and that's going to be coming from the biochar primed with the litter, primed with the ammonium sulfate and ferrous sulfate, sulfate of potash, and the RGS. All of that will be slowly released through that portion of the Carbon X. We move into round 2. Again, repeat application there because we need to get down closer to that 1 pound AI to get our typical crabgrass control. Then we start moving into round 3. We're talking about pre-stress conditioning, right? So I'm using Microgreen in this instance. Microgreen is strong on the biostimulant side of the label, plus it's also strong on the micronutrient side of the label. So you're supplying everything that plant needs leading into a period of stress. You've touched on its micronutrients, and you've touched on its macronutrients, and you're setting yourself up for success in that way. Okay, now we look at the other cool season. We'll say round 1, you could even flip this. So you could say round 1, you could go out with the Carbon X 2404 with prodiamine, or you could run a product like InCharge right there. You could run InCharge and RGS and triclopyr and prodiamine in 3-way. You move into round 2. Round 2, I've got the 1801, a little bit higher nitrogen content there. Again, I'm looking towards pre-stress conditioning, right? And for the pros, we've got the 818. This would be a base product, and it would be lower analysis. Obviously, it's an 818. And it's got a higher rate of iron. So you're looking at 4% iron. You got a 1-to-1 nitrogen to potassium ratio. Again, the goal there is going to be pre-stress conditioning. Then as we move into the second half of the season, you can see how this looks, right? So I like this. You start moving into the dog days of summer. I like the dethatch product right there to give you that digest and chew things up. And I really like Air 8 right there too. You could even move Air 8 into round 3. I also like Air 8 in round 4. Again, it's potassium. You're looking at that hardened off point of the plant, and you are also opening up the soil. So in terms of infiltration, you're decreasing the resistance on the roots. And as in the event you do get rain or when you irrigate, that's working its way into the root zone where you specifically need it. And then, round 5, either program there, you can see how that kind of plays out. Green effect, you're extending your color through the dog days of summer. Same with your microgreen, you're extending that through the dog days of summer. You move into seed. Really, you could throw a whole host of different products in here. So we got, like, for instance, the 901, the Green Start. I've got the 818. You could also run Carbon X right here. You could also run the Air 8. All of those products will work nicely together right there. Moving into round 6, I have Carbon X. Again, this is if you want to go granular. I've got right here at 150 pounds to the acre. That could be a little high. If you're going for a renovation in your aeration overseed, it may be something you want to run 150 pounds to the acre, because again, when you renovate, you're beginning to strip the soil of a lot. You expose it, and you're going to have a loss in carbon there. So that may be a good thing to run. Round 7, I just have ammonium sulfate for the 2 ending applications. Again, the target there is ammoniacal nitrogen going into the winter. You're focusing on that root development portion of the plant, that growth cycle of the plant. So as far as programs are concerned, you can really get creative here. And if you pay attention to how I have that structured, I like it. It's your growth rate at the beginning of the year accelerates really, really quickly. And so your nitrogen input should almost have an opposite effect, because even if you're not fertilizing, you're still going to get that extreme amount of growth. What you do want to focus on will be things that will aid in helping that plant remain healthy through that period of stress, right? So potentially your K levels coming up, your micronutrient supplementation moving up, that the biostimulant aspect of your program increasing, anything you can do to ward off that stress. Then you make it through your summer period. as you come out of your summer stress, that's when you want to really target your nitrogen rates and make sure you can get that level of recovery, you get that level of vegetative regeneration to move into winter. As you move into winter, where you suspend in top growth, a lot of that growth is pushed towards the development of roots. This is really when nitrogen begins to make its big play in the root system. Otherwise, it's really not making a big play on the root system other than tapping into it for energy expenditures. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you were able to learn something. If you have questions, feel free to comment in the comments down below. All right, everybody, I appreciate it. Take it easy.